so I would like to welcome everyone to the roundtable today. My name is Brianna Reese, and I'm the student director here at Philadelphia University for the roundtables. Today, our host is Zach Mohammadi. Zach is a Philadelphia University's master's student in our interior architecture program. Today, our panel will address the question, how can we fight against terrorism and extremism? Right now, I will turn the table over to Zach.
Societies. And my friends.
Hi, my name is Maral Mushmush, and I'm a second year grad student for the MSSD program, Master of Sustainable Design.
I'm Karen Albert. I'm coordinator of the Arlen Specter Center for Public Service.
Hi, this is Jake, third year Law Society student.
My name is John Runco, also a third year Law Society.
My name is Bianca Ness, and I'm a second year Law Society student.
I'm Colin Murphy, and I'm a first year comm student.
And my name is Rob Fleming. I'm the director of the MS in Sustainable Design student. These guys have been my students and are my students.
And Blaine, I'm the faculty director of the Specter Center.
I'm Josh Smicker, and I'm a professor and director of the comm program.
Great. So we should start, I think, with the concept of extremism and what actually turns these peoples to extreme, peoples as dangerous for their society. I would love to hear actually your thoughts about these. Like, what do you think, guys, about like how can an individual, which is not related to any like terrorism or any kind of radical party, how could actually it turns to a threat for their society?
Wow, it's heavy and multi-layered, so I guess I'll start. I think alienation is probably one of the first things, perhaps from a global or modern society. I think that's one of the things, so I'll start with that. I think it's a strong indicator.
I think coupled with finding a sense of community, especially online settings, I think this alienation sort of often gets twinned with I become part of this cause because there's this online message board, there's a way to feel like you are part of this broader community in a way that provides excitement and purpose. Yeah.
And I think it happens in both kind of like immigrant-based society like US and Canada and other conservative society like religious countries. It happens in both because like people, for example, in the US, like it's based on immigrants, and people with different backgrounds come and actually want to start a new life here in Canada and US, like in Western countries. But I think the problem is they've been somehow they've been ignored because of their background, their religion somehow, and that's actually start them to feel bad about themselves and try to fight back society. So we see these people are not targeting governments, they are targeting peoples. So we had that actually student in Germany, like it was 2 months ago. He's actually shoot his classmates, and it was horrible. And the actually same pattern I think it repeats and repeats. So how can we, we are going to discuss about that. And that I found that as a one main thing that actually happens and turns people to extreme people. So I'd love to hear.
I think what you're saying, which is really interesting, is it becomes circular in and of itself. There was a terrorist act for whatever reason, which then, especially in the United States, galvanizes and step against a group, we tend to do. And then further, going back to what I said, further alienates that group, pushes them further away because of the way they're treated. A good example, after 9/11, there's a gas station that was near my office at the time, and a very nice guy owned it, Muhammad, is his name. And he was a member of the community for a long time, he owned the gas station. And after 9/11, and he shared this with me because he was a friend. People were spitting at him when he went to put gasoline in the tank. And so he's settled enough and he's wise enough to know that these people are idiots. But if you take someone who's not as settled, it creates animosity, and it circles in on itself. Then the person may want to do something because they're angry, they do something, and that creates a reaction of more anger, which creates more anger on the other side, and you keep on pushing the sides away from each other. So I think that's, I guess, what you're saying.
Correct. And the other thing is, like, when not stay too quiet, it's always better to interrupt them and not letting them actually continue actually it stops that the actually final stage in the
You're saying we as people should, as individuals, should stop when someone else is acting in a negative way towards a group, or we should speak up.
Yeah, I think that's how we change our values throughout the history, right?
Right. I was going to ask if if anybody thinks mental illness has anything to do with it, or a dysfunctional family, for example. It doesn't always, but can contribute to an individual if they have certain emotional problems to begin with, and then they're looking for acceptance somewhere.
I've noticed that seems to be the narrative when it's like white terrorism, when it's like a white male shooting a school, things like that.
Right.
And often we alienate if it's somebody that is Muslim, we focus on they're a terrorist. If it's somebody that's white, we focus on its mental illness. So I think
that's simple.
there should be a balance between how we treat it and the ideologies that go into it. We should assess them to the same standard.
Underneath a lot of this is fear. A lot of the motivations, both majority and minority cultures. When people promote fear in the majority culture, it tends to build up the potential for minority cultures to begin to be upset, because and many people have come to power by promoting fear, and it's something that I think in the majority group we need to be more sensitive of. And I like to point a lot of the discussion to the majority group, not necessarily the group that's being focused on, but the culture at large really plays a big part in, and I think you said it early on about inclusivity and people feel, and you said that about people. Creating a situation where people feel included. Like this round table, everybody was brought in. I've been in many, many rooms throughout my life where we've had a situation like this where this person right here, I just kind of sit like this for the whole time. And I talk to you guys, and I basically make this person invisible. And I've seen over and over again the majority group make others, whoever those others are, whether it be female, African American, Muslim, and they make them invisible. And I find that to be something that is very damaging to the person. Like, you felt bad when I did that, right? You felt like,
a little bit.
right? And if that happens over and over again, you start to really feel ostracized. You start to, you're like, I don't really belong here. And then you become susceptible to finding other groups that you could belong to. Some radical, some not. But I don't think we do enough on fear and how fear plays out in our interactions.
And I think maybe to bounce off that at a sort of macro level, I think it would be remiss to not mention the changing norms of discourse, especially in our current environment. So I mean, say what you will about Bush's handling of the 9/11 attack, but I mean, he went out of his way to make clear that we were not at war with Islam. He visited mosques. I mean, I think the language and the discourses, and especially the age of the Trump campaign, where he's literally talking about banning Muslims from coming into the United States, and having the wonderful sort of response in the last debate, like the Muslims report stuff hashtag. I don't know if anybody sort of saw that after his diatribe against Muslims, but I do think as a very serious response, I mean, I think that the sort of acceptability of what I would call hate rhetoric with at least some parts of the American mainstream is tremendously frightening to me, and I think just intensifies and problematizes this issue even further.
Since we're talking about radicalized people and targeting people to join such an organization that commit horrendous crime, I feel you actually have a tremendous disaster management program, and one of the courses which I took last year by special permission was national defense and national security. The very first day of the class, we discussed about one thing, a systematic process that terrorists use, they apply to radicalize one individual. Regardless of the reason, maybe political correctness or maybe that's the fact, we tend to avoid mentioning a specific group as a vulnerable, the special vulnerable target, getting radicalized all the time. But however, from studying that course, and the factual-based argument would be that people being, like say you said, being abandoned by a larger society tends to be a better target to radicalize and to perform those horrendous acts. I don't remember the name specifically, but I believe this either Al-Qaeda or ISIS. They have a online issue magazine called Inspiration, if I remember that correctly. Inspire, thank you. And we had to analyze that magazine. It does not talk anything strategic, but it has a twisted interpretation of religious meaning and Quran, and somehow I feel that's damaging to both the religious entity and also, of course, where I was reading it and getting radicalized by it. And this, and how important is this feeling of being a part of something is tremendous. I'm going to use some rather fascinating example. I'm a gamer. Any of you heard this game Mafia 3 coming out?
Sure.
Of course. Talked about a it talked about a veteran coming back from Vietnam and entered to the Shadow City. It's called New Borders, but it's really the New Orleans in the game set. And he belongs to one of the mafia family. He was an orphan, and he finds a family in the army. He belongs there. Right. And after the war, he got sent home with the entire mafia family murdered, and he steps on the revenge. And that basically is the theory. How easy, once you found something that you belong to it, and it belongs to you, and got stripped away from you, and then how eager you're seeking for this revenge. And just like people getting radicalized all the time, and all we have to basically say, you know, but of course you have to do it smartly, saying you getting abandoned during our course and let's fire back. And that is the main problem here. It is not necessarily about social class or religious belief, but it's more about a belonging kind of feeling to a larger part of society.
There's a great book, I don't know if you guys read it, and I recommend it to you guys, Jihad versus McWorld. And McWorld? McWorld. Jihad versus McWorld, which is a really excellent book, and it's exactly what you're talking about. It is the loss through modernization of people losing their identity. That we are stuck, I forgot what Karl Marx called it, but it's a feeling that of rootlessness that you don't know.
Alienation.
Yeah, he has another word for it. But so you desperately look for belonging, and it's those what you said. Those are the people who are perfect targets because they've been marginalized, they're angry, and they're lonely. So you put that all together, and now they have cause, and they're empowered to the point they may even kill themselves to kill others. But that power is so intoxicating that it drowns out that pain that they have. The other thing I really liked your point. The United States is a very weird dynamic. We always need an enemy. Always. And I really think it comes from what you said. It's a function of fear. I really think it comes from the top down for the very small people who have power and money to keep those who don't occupied. So we don't do what we should do and take more control. So we fight among ourselves in different classes. There's always a good guy and a bad guy, whether it's the Japanese during World War II, whether it's always the Jews or the blacks or whatever it may be. There's always some sort of enemy to fight within so that you ignore the bigger issues of inequality and unfairness. Profiteering and all these things. So you ignore that. Instead, we foolishly spend time doing that. So I think we have to recognize this. We're cowboys and Indians. We grow up with the cowboys and Indians playing. There's a good guy, bad guy, white hat, black hat. There always seems to be the enemy, and it keeps shifting. And unfortunately, right now, it's the Muslims that have come under that. You've taken the place, not entirely, there's still enough hate to go around, but it's become a primary source. So I wonder where it's coming from. It's really power issues, deeper than all of this.
I think that a form of solvency for that type of isolation is with an issue of multiculturalism, striking the right balance between integration and assimilation. Integration is where a minority culture needs to where the minority culture is accepted within the context of the society, and it's allowed to practice religiously, have culture within that society. Assimilation is more hardline and says that a minority culture needs to act and adopt the values of the society that are already there. And I think that there needs to be a balance between those two realities. We can't have like an isolated community, and we can't have those minority cultures to feel as if they're being completely ignored and they have nothing to identify with within the society.
Yeah, I was like, that's one thing I didn't like about the U.S. They use the melting pot. I don't like the melting pot because by the time you put all these great flavors in, they all smush together and you got just this bland gravy. And I'd rather think more, and Canada adopts this, I don't know if they really do, but they talk about a cultural mosaic, which is more about the model that you're promoting, where you have individual cultures expressing themselves. When you stand back, you see a bigger picture that's really beautiful and diverse. So I've been trying to downgrade the melting pot theory. I think it's not really a goal. I mean, I like beef stew. You ever have beef stew? It's good, but it's a big old mashup of stuff. So I don't know, maybe I go too far with that. But.
So I would love to mention that, we talked about how actually other people start to feed poisoning these and targeting these people. So I would love to actually talk about the media and how media and like social media or like Fox News or like other media is doing that. Like, what do you think? How they are doing? How they actually?
I think that is out of our hands in a sense, but that it kind of paints to the enemy and the fear. The media is what portrays and controls the outlook of an entire nation, and the portrayal right now is definitely a negative light. And to change that, it would have to stem from above us. What we could do would have to be ground level, I believe.
Well, I don't really think it's really out of our hands completely. Like right now, what they're mentioning is not to mention Islamic extremism. So we don't try to associate extremism with Islam. We're trying to say jihadist extremists. Because that's really important for us to say not to misrepresent a whole community of Muslims and just say these extremists are not Muslims, So I think that's what I would say.
Yeah, and I think that there's I don't think it's out of our hands in the sense that there's a whole new digital platform that we can broadcast our own media. We can create our own narratives around this, so we can have an inclusive rhetoric that doesn't overly critique multiculturalism like Fox News, that doesn't marginalize Muslims, say that we need to monitor them. We have the ability to structure our own narratives around the geopolitics because that news is out there now. Now that we have a digital platform, we don't rely on the media for our information. We can have an objective view of the information, and we choose the media we want to see the perspective we want affirmed in us, whether that be Fox News or the Young Turks or other organizations.
I completely agree with both points there, and I think that to some extent we're able to, but on a larger scale, when you have Hillary Clinton in debate saying it correctly and you have Donald Trump saying it incorrectly, we're not able to influence on the scale that we're talking about 150 million people the way Donald Trump is, and that's incorrect. It's an incorrect way of stating it.
I think that was mentioned in topic. We are not going to change things in a bigger scale. We are here to talk about what we could do as individuals. So what we could do, what are our responsibilities? So we should, I think, identify problems and things that actually cause these extremism, and then talk about them. And try to change our values. And I think that make the culture, and then they start to actually adapt them, because we are watching things, right? They don't mean anything without visitors.
Yeah, I think that's sort of following from Colin. I mean, I do think that talking about the media environment we're in now, I mean, I do think that those conversations are actually a little more two ways. And I a recent example, slightly off topic, but I think connected, was talking about like Fox News. I don't know, did anybody see like the absurdly racist Chinatown investigative report on Fox News? So if you have not seen this, Fox News sent one of their idiot reporters to find out, basically to understand, I don't even know what he was trying to find out.
He's trying to mock people.
But like basically like went to Chinatown in New York, just, it was really awful, intercut with like the Karate Kid movie, there was like a bunch of like weird flash cuts. And then immediately it was mocked by everybody on social media. So on Twitter, on Facebook, there was a whole sort of series of like people making fun of this terrible Fox News piece. And then that actually bubbled up and was made, like the fact that response got the attention of The Daily Show, and they ended up sort of now at the sort of corporate media level, ended up also sort of publishing a sort of critical take on that. So I think like that sort of feedback where if enough people are challenging these top-down representations, if there is enough of a pushback on Twitter, if there is like a hashtag that hits, like everything from Muslims report stuff to Oscar so white to that those types of social media campaigns then can sort of feed back into broader mainstream media coverage. So thinking about it as more of a conversational piece that we can be a part of and can call these stories out, then sort of circulate and recirculate those messages. I do think you're right to say in terms of immediate exposure or sort of being able to leverage popularity, it's not quite as extreme as some of the platform Donald Trump with his millions of followers, but I do think being part of those conversations, particularly critiquing racist language, Islamophobic language, I think that there are ways in which that can network, and that networking response actually feeds back into the media and some top-down media more generally as well.
Yeah, it was disgusting that Fox News actually did that sort of report. I believe I have the most credential on that situation as being the only Chinese in the room. Back to the social media point. The situation we have on our hand is a very delicate one, with preventing and helping people who are going to be and about to be radicalized. If I'm assuming right, by applying the right voice and utilizing social media, we should be able to talk them out, like in one way. However, social media is a tremendous thing in the 21st century. Everybody get to participate in any event you want, share your opinion. We can never and we cannot overlook the effectiveness of social media. However, we cannot exaggerate it. Again, how reliable is social media? That is one question. We have a website. If you go on Google, search Mythbuster, that you can find lots of information on stuff getting passed on social media that's untrue. For example, one of the biggest waves 3 months ago was about one of my favorite tea brand, Arizona. And it was on Facebook or Twitter, I believe, that people are trending on this information saying they're adding human urine into their drinks. It got reposted like numerous times, and it was quite effective until a couple of websites specializing in myth-busting decided to publish that was just a joke, a rather bad taste one, and it was a myth. Same with the situation. If we are taking responsibility individually on social media, promoting the value against radicalization, how effective will that be? And since it's a really delicate situation, can we be utilized, counter-utilized in the situation? And what if somebody actually pursue a wrong path on the situation?
Well, building on that, social media is extremely dangerous. Look at Leslie Jones. Just look at her Twitter account. She's a comedian on Saturday Night Live. And the trolls that come on social media, I think most people reading that should be shocked that Leslie Jones had become a radicalized member of whatever, because it was so hateful and so unbelievably vile. So yeah, social media is nice in that we can show support, like in the Chinese interview thing, which was horrendous, but it also can be the source of radicalization. You read some of the things that are said. And what I wanted to ask you folks is, have you felt being whether in Philadelphia or wherever you've settled in the United States, where you grew up, whatever, have you felt marginalized? Have you felt threatened? And because you're obviously two very successful people, but yet do you still get that type of hatred coming towards you?
Yeah, I had a couple of experiences, but I really don't want to talk about them, but because, you know, all of the modern countries, when you actually travel, it happens also in my countries, so in my country, because like we have some people coming from Afghanistan or like Pakistan as like workers, and they are not educated, so in that level of society they might do some crimes. And so I think I start to talk about them to my friends, to actually not all of them are criminals. So actually what Donald Trump or Fox News is doing is like labeling all the people, like dividing the society.
All Mexicans are rapists.
Yeah. So actually we are sharing, Muslims or like Middle Eastern are sharing our with Mexicans.
It's always something.
Yeah. So the thing is, the actual point is that they are dividing us, and what we could do actually to, it doesn't matter what I have experienced. It matters what we respond as like people who are educated, and people who understand these values, and we know these are not wrong values because of their feedbacks to the society. So we cannot say like people have wrong values, but we could say like which value actually has better feedback to a democratic, to a democracy or to a more healthy society. And actually, that's how things happens for me.
Well, I think medias like Fox News, CNN even, they amplified the utilization of Islam greatly in this nation. What they do is, it's not necessarily they do have a moral compass against certain religious or individual community at all, but as crazy as they can on reporting any related information, the more viewer they get. Hence how the failed army got so many hits on YouTube. We tend to enjoy these sort of events where, you know, things are extreme and something outrageous on the other hand. And that is just, they turn their profit over their social responsibility. And I think that's the essential point of why are they, including the Chinese report. And I can't tell you how outrageous I was after I see that. And it's about, I think with those major mainstream media, it's more about money than morality, like I mentioned. Unfortunately, it's given the constitution in this nation, and since we're using the media in this country as an example, might be very limited things we can do about them. But again, one essential point to bear in mind, I think, in this sort of situation, those people who are trying to radicalize others in the society wish to get more coverage. And by playing the game, no matter what position you take, you're falling right in their trap.
Like even like Hollywood is like misrepresenting. Like right now, there's this movie. It's gonna come. It's called Rumi, which is like a notable Islamic scholar. But the person that's representing him doesn't even have like Middle Eastern features. He's Leonardo DiCaprio. So I think it's like really important for Hollywood to really like have someone that is representing that character, so that it doesn't just say like you're saying, like make money. Like you're not trying to just make money. You need to try to create this like image of what really Muslims are.
That was a really good point. So there is an Iranian. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Unfortunately, I have to leave soon. So I'm probably going to change the conversation a little bit. But one thing that I've always wondered in terms of terrorism in the world, and particularly against the U.S., what is it about the U.S. that makes us so hated around the world? You know, around the world, basically. When I'm trying to think of what can I as an individual do to help stem the tide somewhat, I try to figure out, well, why are we hated so much? And I thought I would just throw that out there. Because I'm not quite sure, but obviously we are.
We have a large military quagmire, like, all across the world. We're involved in multiple conflicts, and it's hard as an individual American to truly know what all those conflicts are and how they're affecting certain people, certain countries. And I think that's something that, as individuals, we definitely need to become aware of. I think there are legitimate reasons to be critical of the U.S. because of the large military hegemony that we have in the world right now.
Well, we can't just blame the entire situation on a strong military. It is not a strong military that make your country vulnerable and make you targetable as a supernation, as a superpower that we should pick a bone on. Any nation should be able to reserve their power of retaliation when deemed necessary. And when the United States deemed it necessary, that's because your interests are being offended, or your national security and defense are being offended.
Your financial interests.
I'm not going to add on that point in my statement, but yes, maybe one word. The national interest. The national interest grab hold of the term as a huge broad spectrum within this definition. However, what I think is the problem come down to individual or smaller scale of society is that people in this country are somehow in a natural high because people in Washington, the politicians, they use words like radical people, they use words like terrorists, they use Middle East, these terms, and China, by Donald Trump often, the politicians label these terms as enemies, as bad people to achieve their political agenda. And it's the same equation as the news organization apply, more adversary you have and more you're condemning on them and more you pass the emotion to the public, the more support you can draw.
Well, it's the fear that, and keeping power. But to turn it to things more constructive. I think one of the more constructive things I've seen was the Gold Star family. I forgot their names, I'm terrible with names. Cons. When he stood up there, not as a Muslim, but as a man with a son, an American. And I think a lot of Americans were able to see and say, I like this guy. I like how he's talking, he's very articulate, he's very intelligent, he's very sensitive, he's saying things. I think that's something we have to work on. I've said that in other circumstances. I think it's the storytelling of that you're Zach, that's who you are. It's like that's how you should be judged, period. And I think when I meet you and I get to talk to you, it becomes a human being. And I think what he did has to be done more. By all the conversation between a lot of people, so that instead of going, oh, she wears a headdress, she must be this, and then you speak to you for 1 second and that ends. But the question for most decent people, but that's what needs to be done. The conversation has to do with what you're doing today. Is people just take each other as just other people who have problems with children, who have grandchildren, the whole business. And I think then we can relate to each other and not stereotype and marginalize each other. I think that's to me, is the most important thing, is talking and not getting into our separate angry groups, because that will just
I don't think that should require an evacuation of, in this instance, Muslim identity. I don't think it's that he is transcending being Muslim and becoming just human. I think it's about sort of critiquing stereotypes, and basically critiquing and pushing against stereotypes of that identity. So I mean, just like I wouldn't want to have to evacuate my Jewish identity or my various my various identity groups. I think it's a question of how do you talk about there are different types of Muslims. That I think it's a way to sort of get around, I think, a sort of singular and primarily negative stereotypes of different groups that also, as we've seen in this election cycle, is also applied to Latinos or the Chinese. I mean, I think there's a real, what I think is a sort of depressing and terrifying resurgence of tremendously racist language that has sort of become sort of bubbling up into acceptability, and I think like pushing up against that. But I think I guess I would push back a little bit on the need to sort of turn to the human and ignore those differences and say just acknowledge those differences, but also challenge the way that they are getting presented or the meaning that are ascribed to them.
Well, I wanted to get back to your question about being marginalized. So sometimes I do feel marginalized, but then also like there's a lot of support. So, like for example, like so I'm from West Virginia, and like I had an incident where this woman like looked at me and my mom, and she was like yelling to go back to your country and whatnot. And then, but then there was this other woman that came to me, and she's like, don't listen to her. And like that was like my first instance of like feeling racism. Like I've never had it before. And so when that other woman came to us, I was like, oh, okay, so not everyone sees it that way. And then even with like right now with this presidential campaign, like I feel like there's a lot of people that will like smile at me like purposely, like see like we support. So there's really been a lot of like this contrast between, oh, I fear you, or oh, I support you, kind of thing. And then also, so like in West Virginia, of course, there's a lot of like people that they believe what they see in the media. But then we had like a flood that happened in West Virginia, and our like whole Muslim community there, we just gathered a bunch of girls and boys, and we went and helped out. So a lot of the people there were, there was one person that was like, oh, so y'all came to prove us wrong of what we believe of you. And we're and we were like, we're just trying to be, to show, like what Muslims are, but we are here sincerely just to help you. And so it's really like important for Muslims to break these like misconceptions that people have of us.
I think a lot of it comes, this is a good story, and a lot of it does come from interaction. I agree, and that's how we build empathy, by making connections. And a lot of it is made by eye contact and words, and through these conversations we start to say, oh, okay, so-and-so is this, but we do mostly share, and the more we get together, the more we realize how much alike we really are, how much we do have the same values. And when we separate, and and today we talked about Levittown in my class. That was the first suburban community. It was built for whites only. So those whites living there had little opportunity to ever see anybody that was different to them. In fact, they had signs up that said, this is for whites only. And they reinforced that. They felt very comfortable there. And there's also fear, there's also comfort. People will try to gather around themselves in their tribe, so to speak, so they can feel comfortable and not threatened. And so the more that this kind of stuff happens, it's very threatening in the beginning, but then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, we can have this conversation. It's not really, there's so much fear of the unknown. And that fear of unknown plays out in so many negative ways, and it's really kind of sad. So really, to get back to your goal was, what can we do? I think that this roundtable should be happening daily, and I think you need to work a lot harder. So that literally, so this is my proposal.
You're all scheduled too, yes.
You do this like once a week, right?
Yes.
So one of the things that I got a sabbatical a couple years ago. I got to go to the Frank Lloyd Wright School of Architecture in Arizona. I stayed there for 2 weeks. It was amazing. It was a beautiful building, and every day at 2:30, everything stopped. All the classes stopped. Everybody stopped, and they walked to the kitchen, and they made a cup of tea, and they just sat around for half an hour, and they talked. And that was it. No agenda. Hey, how are you doing? And people would get into these really interesting conversations. And people that I didn't like earlier that day, I swear to you, I really came to like them and understand their perspective a lot more once I had a little bit of tea with them. And I think, so getting back to your point is, you wanted to leave with some solutions.
Of course, I mean, that was a cultural thing. So how could we actually, individual, make a culture, to change the culture? For example, when I walk, so we know our program is a really diverse program. So there are 11 actually students. Only I think 4 or 3 of them are from here. So, but when I walk to Canberra, I see like all the white people, black people, Chinese, and all like vegetarians. They are separated. So how can we actually change this culture from the actually smaller scales to the larger scales? I think we should start from the Canberra, right?
Well, I think you started to hear. I mean, you started to hear today. I mean, you already achieved part of what you hope to achieve today by getting all of us in the room. I don't know I don't know you guys. I got to know you. I think you're great. So I think it's even smaller than Cambar potentially. It may be. There's a lot of theories about scale of change and what's the biggest group, how big can a group be. Like that's what, I'm a designer and I always think everything comes back to design, but if you look at the proportions of this room, when I get to the second level back there, you made sure nobody sat in the second level. And you made those corner seats because you want to get, so there is an idea of proximity. And so how many people do we have here? If we had 4 seats, probably 12 to 14 that can sit in a circle. And once you go to the second row of the circle, you sort of lost it a little bit. So your scale might be not Cambar, but maybe it's simple things like these kind of events. I was not kidding about sort of a daily or weekly event that's just no agenda tea, no alcohol of course, but something like this happening more.
That's a shame.
Sorry to show the attendance with our eyes.
How would you, if you said, okay, every Wednesday at 2 o'clock we're going to have tea in our building in the Seat Center. You know what would happen? People would come out of their studios and they would sit and they would drink tea and they would end up talking to each other and getting to know each other, wouldn't they?
That would be fun.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are, is this your spot here? Is this like your building?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you guys have your 2 o'clock tea or anything like that?
I think this is a really good idea that can come out of this, that we can start with these type of get-together. The Specter Center, we're going to just come over for coffee, talk about, it won't be filmed, just a really easy thing during the breaks. And building towards what you want to do. Because maybe like on a chicken finger Thursday, something along those. Instead of everyone sitting in their own little areas, the baseball team sits with the baseball team, the softball team sits with the softball, different religions and everyone sits separately. Maybe we should just do it that you're assigned a seat, and you sit down, everyone sits randomly, and maybe you have the opportunity to speak that one day to someone who you would never even know before, and actually, that could be a great idea.
And it would be really effective because I get a lot, like my best friend, for example, she told me, like, Ron, you like really changed my perspective of what Muslims are, and like numerous people have like told me that too. So like that would be a great idea.
Yeah, my perspective definitely changed when I met international Muslims. I had friends in high school that were American Muslims, but we didn't really get into anything. It was just like, gossip, stuff like that. But when I got here at university, I met Muslims from Saudi Arabia, and they really went deep in what they believed, what their values were, and the history behind why they feel that way. And seeing it from their perspective and letting them openly, define who they were, it really helped me understand that we have similar values and that these values are complex and nuanced. They're just structured differently. So that's an important part of integration.
I will work with Rob on this. I really think it's a great idea to have across the campus different places where people can go and just discuss.
You could rotate it.
Building the building around to discuss these type of issues who want to just mix it up with people they don't see all the time and actually have a nice learning experience. After all, it is the university.
I think we could do something on Canberra as well. For example, it's 12 o'clock.
Okay.
And everyone's sitting with their friends.
Right.
So you come and say everyone should go home and sit randomly now and start to talk to just have the lunch together. So then I have a chance to talk, I don't know, people from China, because we have no people in our program from China. So in that.
Let's test it. If Zach came over to you guys, you were having lunch, he said, hey, we're all going to switch seats for 15 minutes.
But I will not
Would you do it?
share my lunch.
As long as no one touches the chicken.
Excuse me, but I went to the bathroom and we come back talking about a new program. I don't know how this transformation happened. But I would like to make a distinction here. That the difference between since we brought, I think that's what I would like to emphasize. It sounds like a really important issue to me. About I'm sorry, sir. How was
Rob.
So Rob. So you were saying you were sitting at the outside circle right here, and Professor Lane prepped you to put you in a seat over there to get involved. in our discussion. See, that is the thing I find most interesting, astonishing about these sort of conventions. We have people in the room, like from, let's say, what was the last time we had a huge
Trump, we have 50 people here.
We have 50 people here to talk about Trump. And I was late to that one, fashionably. So I was sitting in the outside circle. I did the largest scale of population joining into one conversation is we have people putting in information, exchanging information, and we have people getting lectured. And back to the topic, what individually we could do on the situation with terrorists these days, and especially since we brought up the social media idea. The distinction lies here. There are people inputting and exiling the information to the general public, and there are people getting lectured. And when this sort of situation happens, then it could be it's either going to be a really good one or a really damaging one. How many of you are familiar with this TED talk called The Danger of a Single Story? It's about preconception and what you understand about something you're unfamiliar of. And for example, when I talk about one country, for example, when I say Russia, there are people going to automatically have a picture of Ashmakhanachi in their mind as a firearm. When I talk about China, you're probably thinking about everybody was kung fu fighting, And so it's like your conception, your preconception about one single matter, an individual matter, and you project your influence to the outside community. For example, we have like a full room and a second layer outside the circle. These people will be listening to our lectures. Maybe they select to listen from one or two person on the panel. However, they will be lectured, and that is a problem, especially when it comes to...
So it has to be small. It has to be small.
The lecturing problem.
Right. It has to be in these smaller groups. All of us here have talked. So it has to work effectively. I think it has to start in the smaller groups, in talking with each other, and then growing out of that.
Exactly. That's why I think I must emphasize and put out this information about this distinction between exchanging and getting lectured or listening. So a larger scale at this point, I really don't think it's going to happen, because there are people who are maybe their personality just shy, fear of sharing, but essentially we have to make sure everybody's exchanging information instead of getting lectured.
That's a really good point. So if we were in my class right now, we would do a circle, because we have introverts and we have extroverts. And the extroverts dominate, and the introverts are like really quiet, but they probably have really good things. So if we were in my class, we would just do a little circle, because some people haven't got a chance to talk yet, because we all were interrupting each other. So do you want to do a circle, Zach, and just see how people are feeling?
How? Like, and when?
We do a circle, go around, how are people feeling about this conversation, or sharing something that they wanted to share that they didn't get to share yet? It's your panel, so I'm being like professor here. So.
Sure, why not?
But that's your point about exchange, right?
Exactly. We have to put in our voice.
Right. So I would start over here and say, would you like to share some more with the group about your feelings?
Yeah.
Or you would. Go ahead. Yeah.
Going back to what he was talking about, helping the situation on an individualized basis. I think we can only do so much as individuals. It does come from people who hold a little more, how do I say, prestige. Someone who people look up to.
Like you as professors. I know I can't get a group of students to listen to what I say directly just because of the overtly racial discourse that's going on. One of you mentioned it earlier. About how it's becoming normalized to talk in these racial matters and just say whatever comes to mind. People just love to blurt it out, and I feel like it has to come from a little bit of the top to the bottom and allow people to get their voices out in a polite manner. Because sometimes we get so overly into our politics that it doesn't come out the way it should, and we don't hear each other.
So that's for us.
Yeah.
Doing the Rob's on the circle.
Doing the circle.
I just think you can do it in any way, whether you have a circle where people are, when we go in a circle like this, I think that true expressions won't come out until there's an actual comfort zone. Maybe like this, we came up with this solution an hour into this conversation, 45 minutes in the conversation. You're not going to get that time. You're not going to get that time from people. If we do it in Canmore, if we do it somewhere else, the conversation has to be at a level where everybody can relate. And I don't believe that's always the case. I think there still is fear to somebody saying the wrong thing, even if they're comfortable and have the right outlook on it. They won't be stating their truth.
That's a really good point. So actually, I believe how democracy works is like that. It makes you feel uncomfortable at the first, and then you start to leave your comfort zone, and then you start to learn from each other.
I think, building on what you guys are saying, I really do think we should have a weekly time where we get together. And maybe the first time we get together may not be as constructive as the second and the third, but it has to be, if we really want to change things, then we have to dedicate ourselves to it. And things, I'll tell you this, Bianca, Mark Rudd was a kid from Maplewood, New Jersey, who went to Columbia University. He was just a kid, and he joined this group called the SDS, and before you know it, he was protesting the Vietnam War, and it became national, then it became international. So he didn't need professors. He was just a kid from Maplewood, looking to meet girls and get high. That's from his biography. So look what happened there. A huge movement grew out of what he started at Columbia, because the sit-ins came, and then it took over the world against the Vietnam War. So I disagree with you on that. Yeah, we would definitely like to develop as professors, but you have a lot of agency, a lot, as a student. Don't think you don't. It's amazing how amazing things start in small areas. And I do think that we have to dedicate ourselves to these conversations. I think you're right, John, they have to be small. I think they have to be continuous until we grow accustomed to it. So we have to seriously think how to do that the best way possible. We're still going around the circle. We're on the circle.
Well, that's how, people start to become rebels.
True.
You're a rebel, Scums. But anyway, I think this sort of ideology is effective, but like I emphasized before, it has to come from a exchanging culture instead of we can't even have one person getting lectured, then we lose the entire point of having these sort of panel.
And that's what we do, is we lecture. That's our challenge.
I think
that's what we do.
I think all the professors I experienced and all the professors taught me and still teach me, for example, Professor Lane, they all done a brilliant job getting people involved, the student, to open their conversation in the classroom. So in that idea, we're both, because after all, it is a classroom, we are getting lectured from a professor, and he deeply rooted that, or understanding and getting to know information from others' point of view and amplify our ability to think. I think at the end of the day, this sort of panel, we're not trying to pour some sort of information into someone's brain jar. It is we inspire a new method of thinking. We're in the States. That's a really good advantage, because I believe that's the culture thing in the US college and universities. If we were in the UK or in the Commonwealth nation, which I've been living for quite a while, for my not long enough life, and in those classroom structures, you're just sitting there, getting taught, getting lectured by your teachers and professors. I wouldn't say that's a effective one, especially for people who have the potential of becoming a writer like me. Sometimes it is as much as important as putting in voice and hearing others' opinion. And that's what I re-emphasize that it has to start from a small panel like what we're doing today, until maybe we start even a larger discourse community. Hell, maybe one day this thing can be as big as including the entire Philadelphia area, including everything universities to join this sort of panel. But today, we're starting as small because we have to focus on effectiveness.
Maybe thoughts?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to thank Zach for arranging this. I think this was really beneficial, and I think something that wearing the headdress and stuff, a lot of girls that wear it, sometimes we really just feel like, you know, like nothing can stop me to be like who I am and to follow my goals. And then I think like another idea could be like we could have like a challenge day in Canberra or something, like meet a Muslim or meet a Jewish person or something like that. And similar to like the Super Size Me guy where he like had a TV show where he did that, I think, or something like that. So yeah, I think that's like something that could really create a sense of community.
You guys like that?
Be open and state it in such a way where there's no hidden policies
Be
behind it.
upfront.
Actually good.
Make sure unity in diversity, right?
Right. That would be.
So I just want to thank you all for being here. Thanks to Philadelphia University, especially you guys. And I myself, I think, we actually didn't talk about governments because the world has changed, I think, by individuals, right? So they all start in a smaller scale. So we are here to start maybe from smaller scales and maybe get to larger scale and global.
Thank you.